This was the first and only time I ever used my emergency code word with my mom. My dad was in a band, and some of his band members were in a country band that had a performance on the 4th of July. It was taking place on a ranch-type area near a highway. When I got there, I quickly realized that everyone there was either 20 years older than me or 10 years younger. I was 17 at the time, and so I realized that I was most likely going to be there bored for 3 hours. One of the band members' wives, however, brought over a girl who looked to be my age. She introduced her to me and treated her like a friend. The girl, who we'll call Sarah, started talking to me and asked if I wanted to go for a walk around the field. I agreed and we set off. We started talking about school, and it turns out she was a year younger than me and she was homeschooled. She started talking about how she thought most girls were pretty bitchy, and she also mentioned something about practicing witchcraft. I thought it was kind of weird, but I tried to keep an open mind so I wasn't judging her. We finally got to the side of the field that couldn't be seen by the people at the event, but was right next to the highway. There we came across the body of a dead deer. She looked at me and said, "I really wish I could take its hoof. I wonder if I have any bags on me." I thought she was joking, but she reached into her backpack and pulled out a knife and a brown paper bag. She went over to the dead deer and started sawing off its foot, but she couldn't get it all the way through. She tried to get me to help her, but I said no. So she put down the knife and ripped the hoof off with her bare hands. At this point, I was freaking out because she had just been talking about how much she liked violence and didn't really care about people being hurt. She grabbed the hoof, put it in the bag, and then put it in her backpack. She was still carrying the knife. I tried texting my mom, but there was no service where we were standing. We kept walking, and she was talking about how she would put curses on people she didn't like, and how she was completely desensitized to death and the killing of animals because she had grown up on a farm where she watched her mother cut the heads off of rabbits. We kept walking and came across a fork in the road, and she said we should go one way. Then she told me that she wasn't going to chop me into pieces or anything because that doesn't happen much these days. We finally got back to the place where there was cell service, and I texted my mom our code word. She told me to get back to the barbecue and we would leave right away. Sarah asked me when I had to leave, and I told her that whenever my grandma got to our house, we would have to go home and meet her. I mentioned something about her bringing her dog named Buddy, and Sarah got excited about the name. She said that she had a dog named Buddy, who she set free into the wild, and he was then eaten alive by coyotes, but apparently it was okay because he died happy. Anyway, we finally got back to where everyone else was, and my mom said that we needed to go home. Sarah then asked for my phone number as she had seen my phone. I agreed and put in a fake number before my parents and I walked away. As soon as we were out of eyesight, I ran to the car. My parents got in the car and asked me if she pulled out drugs or something. I wish. I would have known how to handle that. A couple of years ago, I was stressed out from college and big city life and decided to spend a long weekend in the woods doing what my city friends consider utter lunacy, and us outdoorsy people consider nirvana, deep woods free camping in the winter alone. While this sounds like the beginning of a missing persons case, if you are an experienced outdoorsman, it's pretty safe. I also take a secret pleasure in being the white trash warrioress my dad always hoped for. I always hated the feeling of claustrophobia that came with being female in the city, avoiding eye contact, not walking alone at night. When you're a girl alone out in the woods, you're in charge. You're safe within the warm embrace of your own solitary freedom, or so I thought. I spent a few hours on the roads, the surroundings getting wilder and wilder as I drove. I parked in a loud roadside ditch, and with a compass and a map, hiked until I was in a mile's reach or so of some good ice fishing. I was at least 4 miles from the road. I made an extremely discreet camp in a clearing with just one little hole in the snow for my tent and campfire. After a couple of beautiful days of just hiking and relaxing around camp, I made the trek to the fishing hole. Everything was in utter winter stillness. The air was crisp, and the only signs that I wasn't in a perfect vacuum were the twitterings of birds and the very distant rumblings of the half-frozen waterfalls. After a mile or so of crunching along in the snow, I silently celebrated my compass skills when I came out at the exact location I intended to. I punched a hole in the thin crust of ice and set to getting my fish on. My first catch came quickly. I was feeling oddly fatigued and jumpy, so I decided to just clean the fish here and now and take it straight back to camp to cook. I quickly realized my fish preparation skills were rusty at best. I cursed my lack of preparation as I cut myself for the second time. Something in my peripheral senses was irritating me, but I was very set in my task, focusing on the motions in the slippery mess. I sliced my hand open freshly as the fish slipped out of my hands and into the snow. Frustrated, I shouted, "Fuck off with that whistling, will you?" Silence resumed, and then my heart stopped. Living in a college neighborhood, I had grown so accustomed to white noise that I had failed to recognize how grossly inappropriate this sound was in the context. The silence weighed down on me as I broke into a sweat. The only reason a human would be out this deep in the woods would be to hunt, right? And surely no hunter would give himself away like that. And if he was whistling for any other reason, shouldn't he have at least reacted to my outburst? He yelled something back, apologized. No, nothing. Just the total stillness of the woods, silence as pure as it was before I spoke. Unsure if I had misheard the twitterings of a bird or something, I just decided the fish was a lost cause, slung my gear over my shoulder, and headed for camp. I trudged off into the woods, and about a quarter mile from my camp, I saw a large mass protruding from the snow. Apprehensive but drawn, I trudged up to what materialized in the closing distance as a moose kill. A really good moose kill. A clean shot through the upturned eye, staring at me and saying something that was imposing a sense of dread upon me, but a dread I couldn't translate. At that point, I ran fast. In the snow and in the woods, everything looked the same. I knew I was moving south, and I knew I'd passed camp on the east. I made for the road, eventually slowing down to a weary trudge, calming at the comforting sight of the woods clearing ahead to make way for the country roadway. I looked to my left and saw my car 50 yards or so down, jogged to it, and drove the lonely 15 miles to the first motel I saw signs for. I had none of my belongings and no earthly idea why I had just abandoned ship like that. It was only as I was sitting up watching infomercials that night that it started to fall together. Why would the Park Service issue free camp passes for the same stretch of woods that they allowed hunting? The moose defied everything of my rudimentary understanding of hunting. Even with the snow to cool it, decomp starts pretty quickly on an animal that size. You'd have time to take a few quick pictures, but you'd want to have it dressed quickly. Why would you kill a moose 5 miles into the forest? How could you ever drag it back to the road? In the morning, in a sleep-deprived and paranoid state, I described everything I'd seen and thought I heard to a very confused park ranger. He seemed more vexed about illegal hunting than any of my crazy city girl ramblings. He said he wanted to come pick me up and have me take him to where I thought the kill site was. I said I was only going if he brought a gun. He sighed with exasperation and told me when to meet him. We rode out into the woods on an ATV. We ended up getting to a large impression in the snow where the moose had been. Blood was everywhere. There was also a distinct track of the carcass being dragged. The drag marks made a smooth trail in the snow, as if the carcass were on a tarp. The ranger said he should take me back now. He asked where my camp was, and I pointed in the direction of the drag marks. It looked like he was finally sharing in my unease. Back at the hotel, I washed my clothes in the sink and prepared to drive home the next morning. Then an unknown number called my phone. It was the park ranger. The moose had been dragged to my campsite. He described the scene as a huge mess. He wasn't sure if an animal had helped to make it that mess, but one thing was clear. Someone had cut into my tent with a knife. I asked about the rest of my belongings. He said darkly, "You don't want them back. They're covered in moose mess." I then said, So what happens now? The park ranger responded, "Well, miss, we're just gonna keep an eye out for this guy. I haven't heard of anything or seen anything like this before. I'm really sorry this happened." And that was it. No closure, no explanation. In the years that have passed, I've tried every different application of reason. A hunter who needed help, but knew I was already gone. A deranged psychopath looking for his next kill. I still don't know why I didn't hear a gunshot either. The whistling seemed so vivid in my memory, but was it even real? One question has definitely been answered. I'll never go into the woods alone again.